In the small town of Westbrook, nestled between rolling hills and forgotten factories, stood Oak Ridge High School. The building itself told a story: faded brick walls, flickering hallway lights, and outdated textbooks that had seen better days. But within those weathered walls was something money couldn't buy: hope, determination, and dreams bigger than the circumstances that tried to contain them. Where are you watching from today? Comment down below. Oak Ridge wasn't just any high school. It was the heart of a community that had been hit hard by economic downturns, factory closures, and the slow decay that comes when opportunity packs its bags and leaves town. The median household income here was just over $32,000, less than half the national average. College was a distant dream for most, a luxury reserved for the few who might snag a partial scholarship or be willing to shoulder crushing debt. Yet every morning, the hallways of Oak Ridge filled with students who refused to let their zip code define their potential. Among them was Maria Gonzalez, valedictorian and daughter of immigrants, who worked double shifts at the local diner. With a natural aptitude for biology and a gentle touch that made even the most anxious person feel at ease, Maria dreamed of becoming a doctor, returning to Westbrook someday to open a clinic for families like her own who couldn't afford proper health care. "I got another acceptance letter yesterday," Maria confided to her drama teacher, Ms. Peterson, staying behind after rehearsal for their graduation ceremony. "Johns Hopkins, full academic scholarship, but..." Her voice trailed off, the unspoken reality hanging in the air. Even with tuition covered, the cost of living, books, and sacrificing years of potential income to help her family remained insurmountable obstacles. Ms. Peterson, Claire to her colleagues, nodded understandingly. She'd seen too many bright stars like Maria forced to dim their light over the years. But there was something different about Claire Peterson that the students of Oak Ridge didn't know. Before finding her calling as a teacher 15 years ago, she had worked as a production assistant on several major films, including one starring a certain actor known for his kindness, humility, and generosity. "You know what, Maria? Sometimes life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it," Claire said, a mysterious smile playing at her lips. "Just keep focusing on that dream. The how has a way of working itself out." Across the hallway in the engineering lab, Tyler Washington tinkered with what looked like a small robot made from salvaged parts. The son of a single mother who'd been laid off from the manufacturing plant 3 years ago, Tyler had an uncanny ability to see possibility where others saw only junk. His robotics projects had already won regional competitions, and MIT had expressed interest, but the financial reality remained a cruel barrier between talent and opportunity. "Looking good, Tyler," called out Mr. Rivera, the science teacher, peering over the boy's shoulder. "You really think this thing will work for the graduation ceremony?" Tyler nodded confidently. "It'll deliver the principal's opening speech notes right to the podium. Dramatic effect, you know. Might as well go out with a bang." Neither Tyler nor Mr. Rivera noticed the slight wetness in Ms. Peterson's eyes as she passed by the lab, phone clutched tightly in her hand after sending a text message to a number few would recognize. The senior class of Oak Ridge High numbered just 78 students. Small by most standards, but in that group were future engineers, doctors, teachers, artists, and entrepreneurs, if only they could get the chance to become what they were meant to be. Principal Jenkins knew each of them by name, knew their struggles and their dreams, and carried the weight of their limited futures on his shoulders. "Another mysterious donation came in," he told Claire during their weekly staff meeting. 10 new computers for the lab just showed up yesterday, same as the books for the library last month and the sports equipment back in the fall. "Any idea who our guardian angel might be?" Claire asked, her expression carefully neutral. Principal Jenkins shook his head. "The deliveries always come with the same note. For the future, no publicity, please. It's someone who knows we're struggling but doesn't want recognition." He sighed, the lines on his face deepening. "I just wish it could be more. Computers and books are wonderful, but what these kids really need is a shot at college." As graduation approached, a strange electricity filled the air at Oak Ridge. The mysterious donations had continued, culminating in a completely renovated auditorium for the ceremony. New seats, sound system, lighting, even a proper stage where before there had been only a raised platform. The local paper ran a small article speculating about the identity of the benefactor, but no one came forward to claim credit. The night before graduation, Claire Peterson sat alone in her modest apartment, staring at an old photograph. In it, a much younger version of herself stood on a movie set beside a tall, dark-haired actor with kind eyes. She remembered how he had taken time to learn everyone's name on set, how he brought coffee for the crew, and how he listened, really listened, when people spoke. Her phone buzzed with a text message. "It's all set for tomorrow. He wants to know if there's anyone in particular he should mention." Claire smiled, thinking of Maria, Tyler, and so many others. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. All of them. Each one has a story worth telling. On the morning of graduation, the seniors of Oak Ridge High gathered in their newly renovated gymnasium, adjusting caps and gowns that had been mysteriously upgraded from the faded polyester of previous years to elegant deep blue fabric with actual quality tassels. There was a nervous energy among them, not just the usual pre-ceremony jitters, but a sense that something significant was about to happen. "Did you notice there are camera crews setting up outside?" whispered Zoe Chang to her friend Jason. "Like, actual TV cameras. What's that about?" "Probably here for that state senator's kid who goes to Westfield Prep," Jason shrugged. "Their graduation is today, too." But the cameras weren't headed to Westfield Prep. They were gathering outside Oak Ridge, though they had been sworn to secrecy about why. As the seniors lined up for their procession, Ms. Peterson moved among them, straightening a cap here, offering an encouraging word there. When she reached Maria, she squeezed the girl's hand a little tighter than usual. "Remember what I said about surprises, Maria?" "Yes, but just remember that no dream is too big and no dreamer too small," Claire said, her eyes twinkling with a secret. "Now go out there and start the next chapter of your life. It might be more extraordinary than you can imagine." The decorations in the auditorium were simple but elegant. Blue and silver streamers, fresh flowers on the stage, professionally printed programs. Parents and family members filed in, many taking photos of the transformed space in disbelief. The mysterious benefactor had clearly been busy. What no one knew, not the students, not their families, not even Principal Jenkins, was that in a black SUV parked just outside, a man famous for his roles in The Matrix, John Wick, and countless other blockbusters sat quietly, reading through notes Claire had prepared for him about each graduating senior, their struggles, their dreams, their potential. "Are you sure about this amount?" his assistant asked quietly. Keanu Reeves looked up from the papers, his eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that came from his own journey of hardships and success. "Double it," he said simply. "They deserve every chance." As pomp and circumstance began to play, 78 seniors of Oak Ridge High School prepared to march into their graduation ceremony, unaware that their lives were about to change forever, through an act of kindness from a man who understood that sometimes all people need is an opportunity to show the world who they truly are. The graduation ceremony began like countless others across America that day. The familiar chords of pomp and circumstance filled the auditorium as 78 seniors marched down the aisle, their faces a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and pride. Parents dabbed at tears, younger siblings fidgeted in their seats, and grandparents held up phones to capture the moment their family's first college hopeful crossed the threshold into adulthood. Principal Jenkins approached the podium, his weathered face breaking into a genuine smile. "Welcome, families and friends, to Oak Ridge High School's commencement ceremony for the class of 2025. His voice carried across the newly installed sound system with unprecedented clarity. "Today, we celebrate not just academic achievement, but perseverance in the face of challenges that would have defeated lesser spirits." As Tyler's robot successfully delivered the principal's speech notes to mild applause and appreciative laughter, Ms. Peterson scanned the back of the auditorium, her heart racing. There, just visible in the shadows by the exit door, stood a tall figure in a simple black suit, his long dark hair, unmistakable even at this distance. He gave her a subtle nod, and she felt a wave of emotion wash over her. He had actually come. 20 minutes into the ceremony, just as Maria Gonzalez was about to be called to deliver her valedictorian speech, Principal Jenkins paused, his hand going to his earpiece with a confused expression. Someone had approached from the side of the stage and whispered something that caused the principal's eyes to widen in disbelief. Ladies and gentlemen, he said after a moment, his voice slightly shaky. It appears we have an unexpected guest who would like to say a few words to our graduates. It is my extraordinary honor to welcome Mr. Keanu Reeves. A collective gasp rippled through the auditorium, followed by a stunned silence that quickly erupted into disbelieving whispers and the frantic clicking of phone cameras. From the side entrance, Keanu Reeves walked onto the stage with that distinctive gait that millions of fans would recognize anywhere. He wore a simple black suit, no tie, his hair shoulder length, and his familiar beard neatly trimmed. Nothing about his appearance suggested the immense wealth and fame he possessed, except perhaps the respectful hush that fell over the crowd as he approached the microphone. "Thank you, Principal Jenkins," he said, his voice gentle yet carrying to every corner of the room. "And thank you to the students and families of Oak Ridge High for allowing me to crash your special day." In the front row, Maria's hand flew to her mouth in shock. Tyler dropped the controller for his robot. Parents exchanged bewildered glances, and a few students actually pinched themselves, convinced they must be dreaming. "Some of you might be wondering why I'm here," Keanu continued, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "The truth is, I've been following the journey of Oak Ridge High for some time now, thanks to an old friend." His eyes found Ms. Peterson in the crowd, and he gave her a warm nod that didn't go unnoticed by the suddenly alert students. 15 years ago, I had the privilege of working with Ms. Peterson on a film set. She was the kind of person who made everyone around her better, always prepared, always kind, always seeing the best in people. When she decided to become a teacher, I knew her students would be incredibly fortunate. Ms. Peterson felt tears welling in her eyes as dozens of heads turned to look at her with newfound awe. Over the years, she's kept in touch, telling me about this remarkable school in a forgotten corner of America, about students with extraordinary potential facing ordinary obstacles, about dreams that shouldn't have price tags attached to them. Keanu paused, his expression growing more serious. "I know what it's like to face obstacles. My own path hasn't always been easy. I've experienced loss, struggled with finding my way, questioned whether my dreams were worth pursuing. But I was fortunate enough to have people who believed in me, who gave me chances I might not have deserved." He looked out at the sea of blue caps and gowns, his eyes finding individual faces, Maria, Tyler, Zoe, Jason, and so many others that Claire had told him about. "Ms. Peterson has shared your stories with me. She told me about Maria, who wants to become a doctor to help families like her own, about Tyler, who builds robots from scraps and sees possibilities where others see only junk." The stunned silence in the auditorium deepened. These were not generic examples. He knew them. Actually knew them. "For the past year, I've been fortunate enough to make some small contributions to Oak Ridge, the computers, the books, this auditorium renovation. But when Ms. Peterson showed me the list of where each of you had been accepted to college, alongside the painful reality of why many of you couldn't attend, despite your achievements, I realized that the most valuable thing I could give isn't stuff, it's opportunity." Attention filled the room, a collective holding of breath. Something monumental was happening, something beyond the wildest imagination of anyone present. "Today, I'm here to make an announcement," Keanu said, his voice steady but filled with quiet emotion. "I've established the Oak Ridge Future Fund with an initial endowment that will cover the full college tuition for every member of the graduating class of 2025. For a heartbeat, there was total silence as his words registered. Then the auditorium erupted. Students leaped from their seats, parents broke into tears, and Principal Jenkins staggered slightly, gripping the edge of the stage for support. Camera flashes exploded from every corner of the room. Keanu raised his hands gently, waiting for the noise to subside. "This isn't just tuition. The fund will cover books, housing, meal plans, and a stipend for living expenses. Whether you're going to community college or an Ivy League university, whether you want to be a doctor, an engineer, an artist, or haven't figured it out yet, the cost of your education is taken care of." In the front row, Maria Gonzalez had collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Next to her, Tyler Washington stood frozen, his expression one of absolute disbelief. Ms. Peterson was openly weeping now, watching as her former colleague from a movie set 15 years ago changed the trajectory of 78 young lives in an instant. There's just one condition, Keanu continued, his voice gentle but firm. Someday, when you're able, find a way to pass it forward. It doesn't have to be money. It can be time, knowledge, opportunity, kindness. Just find a way to make someone else's path a little easier, the way others have done for me. As the reality of what was happening began to sink in, the faces of the Oak Ridge seniors transformed. Hopelessness gave way to possibility. Resignation turned to determination. Dreams deferred suddenly became dreams within reach. And Keanu Reeves, one of Hollywood's biggest stars, stood quietly at the podium, watching it all unfold with the simple satisfaction of someone who understood the true power of giving without expecting anything in return. What followed Keanu's announcement could only be described as beautiful chaos. The careful order of the graduation ceremony dissolved as reality sank in. Students embraced each other, many collapsing into tears. Parents who moments ago had been quietly resigned to their children's limited futures now sobbed openly, overcome by the sudden expansion of possibility. Principal Jenkins attempted to restore some semblance of order, but his own voice kept breaking with emotion. Please, everyone, if we could just... I know this is overwhelming. Keanu stepped back from the podium, content to watch the ripple effects of his gift spread through the auditorium. This wasn't about him. It was about them. About what happens when barriers fall and potential is unleashed. Maria Gonzalez, who had been waiting to deliver her valedictorian speech, stumbled to the podium in a daze. The carefully written and rehearsed words she prepared suddenly seemed inadequate. She looked out at her classmates, at their tear-streaked faces, at parents hugging each other in disbelief, and then back at Keanu, who gave her an encouraging nod. I had a speech prepared, she began, her voice trembling, about perseverance and making the most of limited opportunities, about how sometimes we have to defer our dreams. She paused, taking a deep breath. But Mr. Reeves just changed everything. He just made it so that none of us has to choose between our dreams and reality. She turned to face Keanu directly. My parents clean houses and serve food to put dinner on our table. They've worked every day of their lives so I could stand here today. They were prepared to take on second jobs so I could maybe someday go to medical school. And now... Her voice broke completely as tears overwhelmed her. Now I can actually become a doctor. I can actually come back here someday and help families like mine. Tyler Washington was next to approach the podium, his usual confidence replaced by raw emotion. I got into MIT, he said simply, but I was going to community college because that's what we could afford. My mom works at the dollar store now after the factory closed. She was going to take out a loan against our house, but I wouldn't let her. He swallowed hard. Mr. Reeves, my robot designs could help people with disabilities. I have ideas that could change lives, but I thought I'd have to put them on hold for years, maybe forever. How do you even begin to thank someone for saying, your ideas matter enough to be developed now? One by one, students came forward, abandoning protocol, each sharing what this unexpected gift meant to them. Zoe Chang, who dreamed of becoming an environmental engineer to help communities like Westbrook clean up industrial pollution. Jason Morales, whose poetry had won national awards, but whose family had been saving up to send him to trade school because it was practical. Deshaun Williams, a basketball star whose single father had been injured on a construction site, derailing their careful financial planning for college. Each story revealed the weight these young people had been carrying, the compromise of potential, the scaling back of dreams, the acceptance of limits imposed not by their abilities, but by economic circumstance. Parents approached Keanu too, some unable to speak through their tears, simply grasping his hands in wordless gratitude. Others found their voices, sharing what this meant from their perspective. I've been working 2 jobs since my husband got sick, Mrs. Washington told Keanu, her voice barely above a whisper. Tyler's so smart, but I couldn't give him what he deserves. I've been carrying that guilt for years. My daughter got accepted to 7 universities, Mr. Gonzalez said in heavily accented English. 7. But we could not afford even 1. Every night she studies until midnight, then helps her mother with English. Now she can just study, just be a student. Throughout it all, Keanu received their gratitude with genuine humility. He didn't speak much, understanding instinctively that this moment wasn't about him. It was about watching 78 lives transform in real time, about witnessing the exact moment when a weight lifts and people can stand taller. As the impromptu testimonials continued, Ms. Peterson made her way to Keanu's side, her eyes red from crying. "I knew you were generous when we worked together, but this... Keanu, do you have any idea what you've done here today?" He smiled softly. "I think I'm starting to." He nodded toward Maria, who was now surrounded by classmates, her face radiant despite the tears. "That young woman is going to save lives someday. All I did was remove an obstacle that shouldn't have been there in the first place." The formal ceremony never quite got back on track. Principal Jenkins eventually announced that diplomas would be distributed informally, and the planned program gave way to something far more meaningful, a spontaneous celebration of possibility. Local news crews, initially drawn by rumors of a celebrity appearance, now captured something far more newsworthy, the moment a community's trajectory changed. Reporters who had arrived, hoping for a quick celebrity soundbite, found themselves conducting emotional interviews with students and parents, many still in disbelief. "Can you tell us what this means for your future?" one reporter asked Tyler. "It means I have one," he replied simply. "A future that matches what I'm capable of, not just what my family can afford." As the celebration continued, Keanu quietly pulled Principal Jenkins aside. "There's one more thing," he said, handing over a business card. "This is my financial advisor. The fund isn't just for this year's class. We've established an endowment that will cover full scholarships for 5 Oak Ridge students each year, in perpetuity." Principal Jenkins, a man who had spent decades maintaining professional composure in the face of budget cuts and diminishing resources, finally broke down. "Why?" he managed to ask. "Why Oak Ridge? Why us?" Keanu's answer was simple. "Because Claire Peterson told me about a school where extraordinary kids were being held back by ordinary problems. Because talent and dreams shouldn't have price tags. Because sometimes people just need a chance." As the afternoon wore on, students began to process the practical implications of this gift. Acceptance letters that had been regretfully declined could now be revisited. Gap years planned for saving money could be reconsidered. Career paths chosen for practicality rather than passion could be rethought. Maria found herself surrounded by classmates, all talking excitedly about their suddenly viable futures. "Johns Hopkins," she kept saying, as if testing the reality of it. "I'm actually going to Johns Hopkins. I'm going to be a doctor." Tyler was on his phone, his hands shaking as he called the MIT admissions office. "I declined because of financial reasons, but the situation has changed. Yes, completely changed." Parents huddled in small groups, dazed expressions giving way to cautious joy as they recalculated family budgets, suddenly liberated from the crushing weight of educational costs. Years of financial stress, second jobs, and painful compromises had vanished in an instant. And through it all, Keanu Reeves moved quietly among them, listening more than speaking, witnessing the cascading effects of possibility. This wasn't charity in his mind. It was investment in human potential. An acknowledgement that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. By day's end, as families finally began to depart for graduation celebrations that would now carry an entirely different meaning, the true impact of what had happened at Oak Ridge High was just beginning to ripple outward. 78 lives had been fundamentally altered, and through them, countless others would be touched in ways no one could yet imagine. The story of what happened at Oak Ridge High School spread like wildfire. By nightfall, it had reached regional news. By the next morning, it was national. Video clips of stunned students and emotional parents went viral, sharing screens with Keanu's humble words and genuine smile. The hashtag #Oak Ridge Miracle trended for days. But unlike most viral moments, this one didn't fade after its 15 minutes. This was a story with staying power because it wasn't just about a celebrity's grand gesture. It was about what happened next, about the ripple effect of possibility. In the days following graduation, the Oak Ridge seniors found themselves navigating a new reality. Acceptances that had been reluctantly declined were hastily revisited. Gap years planned for financial reasons were reconsidered. Career paths chosen for practicality rather than passion were abandoned for dreams that had seemed impossible just days before. Maria Gonzalez called Johns Hopkins Medical School with shaking hands. "I accepted your offer, but deferred for financial reasons," she explained. "But circumstances have changed dramatically." When asked to elaborate, she simply said, "Keanu Reeves happened," a phrase that would become shorthand in Westbrook for unexpected good fortune. Tyler Washington didn't just reclaim his spot at MIT, he arrived with funding for his robotics projects and a burden lifted from his mother's shoulders. "She doesn't have to work that second job anymore," he told his new roommate. "For the first time in years, she can just breathe." The media attention brought unexpected opportunities. National news outlets did feature stories on several Oak Ridge graduates, following them as they prepared for college. Corporations reached out with internship offers. Other celebrities, inspired by Keanu's example, made similar gestures at schools in their hometowns. But the most profound changes weren't happening in the spotlight. They were happening in quiet moments, in family discussions around kitchen tables, in midnight text exchanges between friends suddenly scattered across the country at different universities, in the gradually straightening shoulders of parents who had carried the weight of their children's limited prospects for so long. Mrs. Washington used her newfound free time to finally get treatment for her chronic back pain, something she'd been putting off because she couldn't afford to miss work. Mr. Gonzalez enrolled in English classes at the local community college, no longer needing to work double shifts now that his daughter's education was secure. Throughout that summer, Ms. Peterson received text messages from her former students as they prepared for college journeys they'd never thought possible. "Buying dorm supplies today. Still can't believe this is real," texted Zoe. "Got my class schedule for MIT, terrified but ready," wrote Tyler. "My mom just hugged me and said she's not afraid anymore," shared Maria. Claire forwarded these messages to Keanu, who had quietly returned to his life, but remained deeply invested in the Oak Ridge students. His brief responses revealed how much he valued these updates. "This is why we did it. Tell Tyler I believe in him. Your students are going to change the world, Claire." As summer turned to fall, 78 Oak Ridge graduates scattered across the country, from community colleges to state universities to the Ivy League. Their journeys weren't always smooth. Many faced culture shock, academic challenges, and the natural insecurities of finding their place. But they faced these challenges unburdened by crushing financial stress, free to focus on learning rather than surviving. Back in Westbrook, something else was happening. The incoming senior class at Oak Ridge High approached the school year with a new energy. Keanu's endowment meant 5 of them would receive full scholarships, not as many as the previous year's unprecedented gift, but enough to kindle hope. Principal Jenkins noticed the change immediately. "Applications for advanced placement classes are up 40%, he told Ms. Peterson during the first week of school. Every single junior and senior has signed up for SAT prep. Kids who were planning to drop out are staying." The revelation that their beloved drama teacher had once worked with Keanu Reeves and had maintained a friendship strong enough that he would show up at their graduation also transformed how students saw Ms. Peterson. Her casting calls for the fall play drew record numbers. Her advice about college applications was sought after like never before. "You really know him," one awestruck sophomore said during drama class. "Like, he actually answers when you text him." Claire smiled. "I know him well enough to know that he'd want you focusing on your monologue right now, not on him." The local economy felt the effects too. With the burden of college costs lifted from dozens of families, money that would have gone to tuition payments or extra jobs to save for education stayed in the community. Parents invested in home repairs, supported local businesses, even started small enterprises of their own. 5 months after graduation, Keanu Reeves received an unusual package. It contained 78 letters, one from each Oak Ridge graduate, and a thumb drive with a video. The letters shared updates, expressions of gratitude, and most importantly, promises of how they intended to pay his gift forward. "I'm tutoring first-generation college students like myself," wrote Maria. "They're struggling with the culture shock I experienced my first month here. I've started a weekend robotics program for middle schoolers back in Westbrook," shared Tyler, "using video calls from MIT to teach kids who remind me of myself." The video showed the current Oak Ridge senior class announcing the creation of the Reeves Ripple Scholarship. a student-led initiative to raise funds that would supplement Keanu's endowment and extend the number of scholarships available each year. When reporters eventually asked Keanu about the Oak Ridge gift, he downplayed his role with characteristic humility. "I was fortunate enough to be in a position to remove an obstacle," he said simply. "The real story is what these extraordinary young people are doing with their potential. That's where your attention should be." And indeed, as the years passed, the Oak Ridge graduates began making their mark. Maria completed medical school and returned to Westbrook to open a clinic serving uninsured families. Tyler's innovations in assistive robotics helped people with disabilities gain independence. Zoe's environmental engineering work brought clean water to communities affected by industrial pollution. 5 years after graduation, they gathered for a reunion at Oak Ridge High School. The auditorium that had once been transformed by Keanu's donations was now filled with young professionals who had traveled from across the country to return to where their journeys had taken an unexpected turn. Principal Jenkins, now retired but present for the occasion, looked out at his former students with undisguised pride. "When Mr. Reeves stood on this stage 5 years ago, he gave you more than money for college," he told them. "He gave you permission to dream without limits, and look what you've done with that freedom." The reunion had been planned by the students, but they had kept one detail secret from the faculty. As Principal Jenkins concluded his remarks, the side door opened and a familiar figure walked in. The room erupted in cheers as Keanu Reeves, a bit older but with the same humble smile, moved quietly to join them. He hadn't come for recognition or gratitude. He had come to witness the full circle of his gift, to see firsthand how removing financial barriers had allowed 78 young people to become exactly who they were meant to be. As he looked around at what his act of generosity had made possible, his expression was one of genuine wonder and satisfaction. This was never about the money. It was about the ripple effect of possibility, waves that would continue to spread outward, touching lives in ways that could never be fully measured, but would be profoundly felt for generations to come.